Hello guys, MonkeyBot here, and today we're going to be talking about all the new start locations and what that is going to mean for Immortal Empires. So it's going to be the 3 DLC characters that are coming with Thrones of Decay. We've got the FLC character Epidemius, and there's a couple of Legendary Lords that are already in game that has been moved to new locations. One very drastically and the other one very slightly moved. Just a little bit of a disclaimer, I do not have early access to the DLC. My channel is not big enough yet, and I don't think they're accepting new content creators anyway. So I've gathered all of this information from little snippets of other content creators' videos. I've been looking into the corners and finding out where these changes are happening. So there may be a few start locations that have changed that have been missed, but these are the ones that I've worked out so far. So with these start locations, I'm going to be talking about how it's going to have an impact on Immortal Empires as a whole, if it's going to benefit, if I think it's a good change for them, if it's a good low start location for them. I'll be talking about the strategic side of things, where they're likely going to expand, who they're likely going to be going at war with, and things like that. So let's get straight into the video and talk about the first one, which will be Tamicon. So Tamicon, as I'm sure everyone is aware by now, is starting in the Plains of Zambaojin. That is the only one of the DLC characters that has been officially announced on their start location. And to be honest, it's a very isolated starting location because you're gonna have to go to war with multiple Chaos factions before you can get out of the Chaos Wastes. So there's 2 or 3 ways that Tamicon will be able to play out this campaign. This will be by both the player and the AI. So you'll have Archaon to your west, and then you'll have Khorne down in your southeast. So once you've taken out your starting Norscan enemy, you're going to have to make one of these decisions. And I think the most likely decision would be to go against Khorne. That will be both for the AI and the player. But then once you've taken out Khorne, your campaign will go in 2 different directions from here. So it really depends how much territory Khorne has taken into the Mountains of Morn, and then it will also depend on Khorne's relationships with Zartan the Black. So Zartan and Khorne always tend to be friendly in their Immortal Empires campaign. They tend to get alliances with each other. So if you go to war against Khorne quite late into the campaign, if you're saving a few turns trying to build up your forces, get a few plagues going, develop your settlements before you start declaring war on them, the risk would be that he will be allied with Zartan the Black, which will then push you further towards Cathey and less into the Mountains of Morn. If you defeat Khorne quite quickly, you will then likely go up against Grimgor Ironhide and then push down the Mountains of Morn. So that's kind of the 2 sides that it's going to go. Again, if you go into the Cathey side of things, you'll meet up with Village the Curseling. Hopefully you can save Village by that point, so he is not wiped out by Zartan the Black, who tends to win that war. And then you'll likely be forced to go into Cathey mainland and deal with the Dragon Children. I think the only way that Tamicon would go to war against Archaon would be if Archaon would declare war on Tamicon. I can't see it the other way around, Tamicon declaring war on Archaon. I just don't think it's going to happen. At that point, I do believe that Archaon would win that fight, and then Tamicon would be wiped out, particularly when controlled by the AI. So I don't think you're going to get Tamicon going to the left and then start invading Kislev that way. I do think the likelihood is going down either the Mountain of Morn or into Cathey. So moving on to Elspeth. So Elspeth is going to be starting in her capital city, homeland of Nuln. This has got a vampiric incursion going on at the moment, so you're going to have to deal with your initial vampire enemies. This is just a minor vampiric faction, and then you've also got that same vampire faction now contesting Solent. So that means Gelt has been moved to a new location, which I'll get to later in the video. For Elspeth, it's actually a much stronger start than what Gelt had originally. I think Wissenland is a much more powerful province than Solent was for Gelt. And now you're going to have easy access to both of those provinces straight away. You're going to also get one of the Empire forts leading into the Border Princes. So you have a nice strong start for Elspeth, and then that will lead into either the war against the vampires with Vlad von Carstein, or you have Skrag the Slaughterer dealing with the Border Princes. I think this will be very good for the Empire. I think this will put a lot of pressure off Franz and dealing with so many fronts all at the same time. This will mean Franz would have a lot more space to deal with Khazrak and Festus early on in his campaign without having to deal with Vlad and Isabella, because you'll have Elspeth holding them back. I think it's going to be a much stronger location for a Legendary Lord, and I think Elspeth will hold on much better than Gelt was in his campaign. One little criticism I would have, it's very minor, it doesn't really make a big difference to the campaign, but I would have liked to see Elspeth's starting enemy be a minor Nurgle faction. It would have been a nice nod to Tamicon, saying that Tamicon sent a scouting party to Nuln to see his strengths, and Elspeth would have to wipe them out both there and in Solent. But it doesn't really matter. It's not a big deal, but yeah, it would have been a nice little starting enemy for her. Now, the final legendary lord in Thrones of Decay, Malachi Mackinson, will be starting in Norsca in Karakadrak. So we're finally getting that Norse dwarf representation here. I couldn't find anywhere what his starting enemy will be, but I can imagine it's going to be a basic Norscan faction. Don't quote me on that. I haven't actually confirmed that officially. And I think out of all 3 legendary lords coming in Thrones of Decay, I think this one's by far going to be the hardest, because you are surrounded by so many enemies here, so many chaotic factions. So you're going to have the Demons of Chaos in the north. You're also going to have Epidemius when we get to him. You're going to be very close to Archaon. You've got Throg right next to you. You've got Hell Pit right underneath you. The Chaos Dwarves tend to go up that way as well. You are literally surrounded by absolute chaos in this campaign, and it is going to be a tough one to get out. But I also think it's a very important start location, and not necessarily for him, but for the characters that we're going to be talking about later, because it's a gateway now between the Chaotic Wastelands and Kislev. You actually have another gateway of entry without having to fight other Chaos factions to get there. So, but Malachi Mackinson itself is a really open campaign. You can literally go almost anywhere in this. You can go north into the Chaotic Wastes. Depending on the climate, I'm not sure if he'll be suitable to chaotic climate, but I can imagine you'll be going into Norsca quite easily. You've also got Boris as a nice ally to start early on, so maybe you can go meet up with him and try and save him, and then take over the Chaos Wasteland together. There's a lot of options in this campaign, so it's very difficult to know what the AI will do and what the player will do. I think there's just so many options here. So moving on, we've now got Epidemius. So this is the FLC character that is going to be coming into the game. Everyone that owns Warhammer 3 will have access to this, and he's going to be taking the start location that the Demon Prince had, which was just slap bang in the middle of the Northern Chaos Wastes. I'm not really sure about this start location, to be honest, because I know that Daniel struggled a lot in this campaign. He could never really get going anywhere, mainly for 2 reasons. One, he was surrounded by lots of friends he didn't want to declare war on, such as the Norscan factions and Archaon, and you also had a buggy Alice Darkblade right next to you, which basically never did anything. He never engaged in diplomacy. He never declared war on anyone. He was kind of a big bug that just sort of sat there and didn't do anything. I'm going to assume for the sake of this video that Malice Darkblade is working as intended now. So for Epidemius, he has 2 directions that he can go. Daniel has now been moved slightly over to the right into the province next to where he used to start. So for Epidemius' sake, you've got the Demon Prince to your right and then Malice Darkblade to your left. And then you're also very close to Malachi Mackinson, where you can use that to a gateway into Kislev and the Empire. So there's 2 ways that this campaign could go. I think the most likely option is that Malice Darkblade is just going to wipe him out. I think that's just inevitable at this point. I can't really imagine Epidemius surviving that long. He's just going to get wiped out. He's just going to get wiped out by Malice Darkblade. The only saving grace that we're going to have is if Sigvald comes in and saves Epidemius and starts declaring war, so then Malice Darkblade has a war on 2 fronts here. That's the only way I think Epidemius is going to survive. The other option that could happen is if Boris takes on the Demon Prince and wipes the Demon Prince out. I do think that Epidemius has a shot against the Kislevite faction, especially Boris. I think that's a much more likely fight for him to win, and then he'll start pushing west and then south into Kislev that way. And that's the 2 options that he have. I don't think he's going to be able to take advantage of the Malachi Mackinson situation where you've got a gateway now into Kislev, because there's much closer factions to Malachi Mackinson which will be able to wipe him out before Epidemius even has a chance to get there. So it's a little bit of a shame. I would have preferred to see Epidemius somewhere else like Lustria or even North Nagarond. Yeah, I just don't see him really doing very well, particularly controlled by the AI. Obviously the player will be able to deal with that. But yeah, if you're expecting to see Epidemius in your campaigns, I wouldn't get your hopes up. Let's wait and see. When I do this time-lapse video, as soon as the DLC has been released, I might be proven wrong. Who knows? Just want a quick note before I do move on to the Demon Prince officially. If Malice Darkblade is still bugged, I just think he's going to sit there and not really do anything. He's not going to attack anyone. He's not going to push his way into Norsca. He's just going to sit there like Daniel used to do and just be idle for the majority of the campaign, which is a real shame, to be honest. Anyway, moving on to the Demon Prince. So like I said, yes, he's been moved slightly to the right now, which puts him much closer to Boris. So Boris has even got a more difficult time now dealing with Archaon and the Demon Prince at the same time. So Boris is pretty much guaranteed to get wiped out unless Malachi Mackinson can go in there and save him. But I do think that Daniel and Boris has a bit of an even fight. I don't think any of them are guaranteed to win. I do think both of them could go either way. But I think the big thing now for Daniel is that if Boris is wiped out, he's now got the nice entry point. And this is what I was talking about earlier with Malachi Mackinson. He can now use Malachi Mackinson as a gateway into Kislev, making Daniel a lot more active in your campaigns. I can imagine, especially playing as Kislev and the Empire, you are going to see Daniel a lot more now. He is going to push his way down there, start invading the Empire, start invading Kislev, and yeah, you are much more likely to see him now. I don't think there is another strategy other than that. Maybe if Epidemius gets wiped out, he might start pushing left against Malice Darkblade. I do think Daniel has a little bit more of a hope against Malice Darkblade than Epidemius does, so you could see him that way. But I do think definitely he's going to be pushing a lot more further south, more often, as well as pushing left every now and again. Only up to Sigvold. I can't imagine him going to war against Sigvold, but just pushing west a little bit to get out of Malice Darkblade. So now moving back to Gelt, which is what I mentioned right at the beginning of the video. Gelt has been moved to Cathey, which is a very odd move, to be honest, for a variety of reasons. So he technically doesn't start with any territory, but he does start at war with the Burning Wind Nomads, which is just southeast of where Zhao Ming starts. You do start off with good relations with Zhao Ming. I think it's like a positive 30 relationships. So even if you do go to war against these Cathey factions, you are still going to maintain that positive relationship with him, giving you a nice early ally to start your campaign. And then after that, there's really only one place that he can go, which he'll likely go up and deal with the vampires just north of him, taking the province that Yuan Bo would start with if controlled by the player. And then after that, his campaign is going to be no different to the Cathayan factions. You're just going to deal with Deathmaster Tzeentch, and you're going to be dealing with Loki of Felheart. It's the exact same as what the Dragon Children are already dealing with. It's a very bizarre campaign, I think. I think it's one of those campaigns that is just variety for variety's sake, much like Mother Estankia was placed in Nagorond. I do think it's just a little bit weird. Cathey is already very Order-Tide focused. Like, Cathey always tends to win its fights here. It's very rare that Loki of Felheart, Tzeentch, or Village, or the Chaos factions, it's very rare that they're going to take over Cathey. Cathey tends to win all of its fights 95% of the time. So adding another Order-Tide Legendary Lord in there just confirms that even more to me, that the Order-Tide is going to win. It's just now shared between Cathey and the Empire. The only thing that could be unusual is that Cathey and the Empire are going to get bored and then just declare war on each other, which could make it interesting. But again, I don't think it's going to change Cathey very much. I think it's just going to stay very stable in what it was previously, just with another Empire Legendary Lord sitting in the middle of it. As all the starting location changes we know of so far, there may be a couple more that I've missed, but like I said, I don't have early access. I can't get that information for you unless I've sneakily found it somewhere else. What do you think about these changes? I think the majority of them I do like. I love all of the start locations for the actual DLC factions. I like the move for Daniel. I'm not quite sure about Epidemius yet, and Gelt is just a no for me. I really don't like Gelt's change. Could have been so much better. Like, even if they put him in the Mountains of Morn to contest Grimgor, for example, like, Grimgor's already running wild and no one's there to stop him, so putting Gelt in there could have slowed him down. It could have made a big change to the campaign. Yeah, so that's the only disappointment that I have in the changes so far. But let me know what you guys think. Do you like these changes? Do you share the same disappointment that I do with some of these? Am I missing something completely? Is Gelt like the most genius change ever and I'm just not seeing it? Let me know in the comment section down below. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye for now.